Yeah. Well, and thank you everyone for pivoting with us this month. I know usually we would have had this last week, and I hope that a lot of you were able to join us for the Jeff Glover event in Portland. It was phenomenal. If you weren't able to join us, I know he is doing a digital version. So we can get you that information. If you're interested, send me an email or drop it in the chat. But thank you for pivoting, and thank you for being available on an off Wednesday for us to bring you some really, really good content. I think that I may be the most excited person for this content. So thank you guys for being here.
And for those of you who don't know who we are, we always start these off for our monthly State of the Industries, reintroducing ourselves. So I am Leslie Hilbert, the General Manager, of course, of the Experience Brokerage Network, with my partner, Katie. You want to introduce yourself again?
Yeah, I am Katie Hardman. I'm the COO of the Experience Brokerage Network and the team leader of Keller Williams Sunset Corridor. There we go. There's our faces. We both need new headshots, man. We'll work on that, Leslie. But we are excited and honored to be here with you. And the reason that we always reintroduce ourselves is because we have a lot of new faces, and we are honored to be in business with each and every one of you. And we are honored that these individuals have chosen to align themselves with Keller Williams and the Experience Brokerage Network. So thank you for being here, and thank you for choosing to bring your business to our network. We're glad you're here.
Welcome, welcome, everyone.
And
it's an abundant month, Katie.
Yeah, the reason that our theme for today and everything we're going to talk about is based around this. Happy National Fair Housing Month. I know we're almost done or halfway through the month, so I'm late in making this announcement, but I didn't want the month to go by without saying Happy National Fair Housing Month. And we actually wanted to share with you today some resources that Keller Williams has put together to help you with fair housing, and some different resources on being an agent of distinction, adding unconscious bias in real estate as an awareness in your business, and taking care of all different types of buyers and sellers. So there are 3 opportunities that Keller Williams has put together to help you or add this to your business. The first one is a class called The Color of Real Estate, taught by Julia Lachey Israel, who is a phenomenal human, a phenomenal presenter. So if you haven't had the opportunity to get to take one of her classes, I would plug into one of these 3. So the first one is The Color of Real Estate on April 20th at 12 p.m. Pacific. So if you go to register, and I'm going to put the links in the chat, when you go to register, it's going to say 2 p.m. That's Central Time. It's really 12 p.m. Pacific. The second class is Unconscious Bias in Real Estate. And this one is really good. I've taken that class before. That one's going to be May 2nd at 12 p.m. Pacific. And then Keller Williams has rolled out a new certification called Agent of Distinction. And it's actually a self-paced class that you can sign up for and take and join a community to get this certification. So I'm going to post all of these in the chat, but just wanted to bring these to your awareness because they've revamped the classes. There's new classes coming up, and they've added this certification. So I hope that this brings some good resources to you and your business.
I love it, Katie. And that is not all. For those of you guys who have been following along, OAR and NAR and HUD, of course, have put out a ton of resources to support us in Fair Housing Month. We're going to go ahead and put the links to those as well. Some of them are free for you to access, and others you can get booklets and pamphlets to help you support you in business. But the other reason we wanted to bring forward the NAR links is because, in addition to the pamphlets, the booklets, the classes that they provide, they also are providing some incredible data to help support you in your business. They have released 2 reports in the last 30 days that are phenomenal, that you might want to check out and see how that applies to your business, as well as opportunities. And of course, those 2 are the Snapshot of Race and Home Buying in America, and Wealth Gains by Income and Racial Ethnic Groups. So we're going to provide links to both of those that have some awesome data, and you guys know how much I love the numbers. So And of course, we're not going to end this SOI without bringing you even more numbers. So welcome to the data part of this. We are making a pivot from our usual market statistics, and we are going to talk a little bit about the statistics around generational trends based on the new, the report, the Home Buyers and Sellers Generational Trend Report. There was some really awesome feedback here. And we're going to go over a couple of the key slides so you guys know how that is playing out in our markets. So the first one is our breakdown of the buyers and sellers by generational trend. Now, NAR has been doing this report since 2013. And it provides insight into the differences and similarities across the generations. This report is full of so much content. The diversity of the report itself is huge, based on not only what the generations are buying, but why they're buying and what they are buying. And they are also going deep into the decision-making of where and how they are purchasing their properties. This first snapshot is merely just going to be the breakdown of the different generations. And with the big piece here is that you guys as real estate professionals are having to cover a lot of ground in your communication, in your consultation, and guiding and leading multiple generations through the home buying and selling process. So a couple of highlights from this year's report is that Gen Zs that age 18 to 23 made up 4% of the buyers and 3% of the sellers. It has an increase from last year, no surprise there. And from 2014 to 2022, millennials had been the biggest share of buyers. However, there was a slight decline in 2022. Now, what's interesting as you're looking at this, they actually once again broke out millennials into two different groups. They did the same thing with young boomers and older boomers. And if you're wondering why that is, it's specifically because the younger and older versions of those generations had very different motivations regarding why and how they were purchasing their properties. 70% of younger millennials and 46% of older millennials were first-time home buyers. So that was a huge piece. And buyers 43 to 57 comprised 24% of recent home buyers. And this group remains not only the highest income earners, but they were also the second most likely to buy multi-generational homes. I also love the silent generation, right? Like this is our older group of our mature, I should say, our mature group of home buyers. And from 77 to 97, they're still making up 4% of our buyers, and no surprise, 7% of our sellers. But I love that our youngest generation and our oldest generation showed up in the same percentage in the purchase of properties. Another interesting stat, and this one's just for you guys to kind of absorb when we talk about what does the income look like across our generations. There was some major ahas in this for me as I looked at it. And you guys will provide this report so you can dig deeper into those numbers. But one of the biggest things that I reported is we think about this young generation. And if you look at this report, 17% of our buyers between 18 and 23 make between $85,000 and $100,000 a year in the 18 to 23 category. In the 24 to 32 category, 29% are making between $85,000 and $125,000. So sometimes we look at that generation and we think, gosh, what are they doing? What do their incomes look like? They have to pay student loans. The truth of the matter is, you guys, there is a huge population in both the Gen Z and the young millennials that are making a significant amount of money. Now, breaking the diversity down even more, right? This compares the household comparison between the generations, between married couples, single female, single male, unmarried couple, and other. And the big takeaway from this is congratulations, single ladies. You are representing on the purchase front. You represent the second highest category after married couples in 7 out of 8 categories. So might think about that when you are looking for new buyers. And finally, staying on the generational conversation, we would be remiss if we did not have a conversation around multi-generational households. This has been a huge conversation. And as you look through the report, a major decision maker in certain age groups, largely in that 43 to 67 year or 76-year-old group. A huge portion of these buyers are looking for a multi-generational household, whether that means that they are bringing in their children into that household, or they are purchasing to accommodate their aging parents. Woo! That's a lot of data, Katie.
A lot of good data though. Like I hope, well, one, I was looking at what are my stats for how old I am, but also a lot to think about when it comes to what your demographic is, like who you're looking to serve, who you're looking to lead, who you're looking to lead generate for. Like maybe you're looking to add a lead generation leg to your business. Like here's some good information of where you should maybe look and what to target that audience for. Like, I love this multi-generational household. That's eye-opening. So thank you for that.
And for those of you data junkies, this was 4 slides out of 137 amazing pages of research and analytics. So we will provide that so you can unpack that later. And for those of you joining us at Sunset later, we were going to talk about how we build this into our lead generation models. So stay tuned for that. All right. With no further ado, Katie, I think that it's time to introduce our amazing special guest.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. All right, this one's a special day for me. We always have incredible guests on the state of the industry. We always promise to bring you the best, but this one is special to me because not only do I consider her an amazing friend and a consultant, she is my personal MAPS coach for the last 4 years. So today we get to welcome our special guest, Miss Terrie Foster-Nowland, and I'm going to just give them a quick bio on you, if that's okay, Terrie.
Sure.
Annette, why is she here today, and why did we start with generational wealth? Well, Terrie's been in the real estate industry since 1983. She has served in a ton of different roles. Of course, she was a team leader in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I believe, right? Was that your home location?
Yeah, the Tulsa area. We've got 3 market centers here.
She is in the Hall of Fame as a team leader. She's been a black belt team leader. She is an owner, investor in 4 different market centers, has been a MAPS coach for 14 years. And she's also the co-owners of Matter of Influence. And they focus on team dynamics, emotional intelligence, finding your power, business development, business dynamics, DISC, fierce conversations, generational diversity, as well as growth and recruiting. So welcome to the call, Terrie, to talk to us about how we lead, serve, and communicate in multiple generations.
Oh my gosh. I have not seen those latest results that you just pulled up. So I'm sitting here going, I'm taking notes. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to go download the report. So thank you. That's awesome, because we have an arm that we're building. It's called real estate, leading real estate across the generation. And this actually was developed just because, gosh, 10 years ago, guys, this is my 40th year in the industry. Isn't that exciting? I'm excited. 40th year in the industry. And, I did not finish college. I'm one of those stories that says, where did she come from? Well, I grew up in it. My father-in-law was a developer. My mom owned a real estate company. And I'm the bottom of the barrel. I'm the baby of 5. And my oldest sister is 17 years older than me. And so when mom got the ability to do her career, her thing, like she did. And I was in the 6th grade and I swore I'd never be in real estate. And look where I'm at now. I thought I was going to be an elementary education teacher. That's all I got to say about that. So I am passionate about generational diversity. I've actually hired the guy on generational diversity to be my coach because I'm so passionate about it. I have 4, soon to be 5 grandchildren, and I'm watching what is this world doing as we're getting, as they're coming up, as they're growing up, and then the world that they're coming into. And I'm finding myself, and you'll see which generation I fall into in a minute. And Leslie, that was a great overview, by the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. But I have based a lot of this talk off of my coaching with Dr. Tim Elmore, who I've known, my husband's known for 30 years. I've known him for 10 years. And this year we started coaching together. And I don't know if you can see the book. It's not going to work. Generational diversity. It's called A New Kind of Diversity. And I hope that Katie, Leslie, you guys can do a drawing maybe after I'm off. And I would love to send whoever wins a book later, however you can do that. It is like an encyclopedia. And today we're going to like fly through it. And this could be a 3-hour course with breakouts, workshops, and that kind of thing. Easy 3 hours, but we're going to pop through it. I'm going to get my slides up on the screen really quickly because one of the things we're going to work on is understanding what generation we're in. So let's get this up and rolling. Maybe. Can y'all see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, let me minimize all of the people over here. So there we go. All right, so this is the book. I wanted to go ahead and get that up on the screen. So if any of you all want to go to Amazon after we're done, if you don't win a book, go get it, go download it, do the Audible, whatever. It is literally like an encyclopedia. I'm not kidding. So you can open it up and look at the chapter and go, what do I want to learn from first? Katie and Leslie covered all of the real estate stats, but there's a reason why I believe this is powerful for all of us to understand. And honestly, I've been studying the IY generation, which Leslie did a great job breaking out, by the way, in the millennial era. There's different generations inside that one generation because they are the largest generation in the workforce right now. And in a minute, we're going to see how many of you fall into each generation. But I had a quote from Craig Rochelle a few weeks ago, and I thought, this is so appropriate for why I'm passionate about this and why I teach it. Your talent can't take you where your character can't keep you. Your talent can't take you where your character can't keep you. Character. Why character? Well, part of character and part of our culture in this company is that we're learning based and that we're willing to take the information that we learn and be applicable to it. And I don't want to be that person in my generation that thinks everything that we did is right, because it wasn't. It just wasn't. In fact, I'm almost at the point at the age of 60 now that it is like, okay, I'm a mentor in a lot of capacities, not just a leader. And I am so open and willing to hear what all the younger generations are bringing to the table. So we're going to dive into this. This is a quote that I keep in the slides. If you think you're smarter than the previous generation, consider this. 50 years ago, the owner's manual of a car showed you how to adjust the valves, and today it warns you not to drink the content of the battery because the car is telling you what you need to do. You don't have to go look it up, right? Does that make sense? The truth about generational diversity, number one, it's a social science. It is one of the sciences. It is now going to be one of the diversities that we all start studying. It's going to be real interesting. I've been studying this for 10 years with Dr. Elmore, and it's interesting to see where this is going to take us. Each of us encounters new and different people as we lead. We're prone to distrust. In fact, many of us have a value top value of trust or respect. And we have to continually keep building those bridges and gapping this generation, the generational challenges that we have. Generational diversity has been around since the mid 60s. It's nothing new. It's just now we're at a time where we can study it and we can actually learn more about it. And in that, learn more and more about each other and better communicate with it or amongst each other. Generational diversity addresses the elephant in the room, which means it's probably something we're not talking about. I'm going to give you some stats here in a minute. The gap keeps widening between veterans and rookies. And I just don't mean in real estate. I mean just in the workforce. In fact, out of the 7 generations that Leslie popped up on the screen, and I'm not going to pop mine up since she already did this, and we have a shorter period of time to get through this. This is important to know. There are 7 generations on Earth. There are 5 in the workplace right now. So we have everyone from what we call Generation Z. And yes, there are a couple of different names for every generation, but from Generation Z on up through even some builders, what we call builders, are still in the workplace. In fact, you find many builders. I mean, my mother was in real estate, and literally, guys, at 90 years old, she was still doing MLS searches for my oldest sister, who's also in the real estate industry. She didn't consider it work. It was just part of her life. Yet she was still making money as a realtor. So she was still considered to be in the workplace, right? So there are still a few of those people around that we call veterans that are in the top of that 5 generational areas that are actually in the workplace. So it's really, really, really important for us right now to really understand our blind spots about each other. And I'll be frank with you, my generation probably can have the biggest blind spots, okay? The generational gap has, honestly, it's caused us to tolerate each other more than accept each other. And if any of you all have done a job interview that maybe you're in that younger gauge of the millennials or in the upper gauge of Gen Z, who are all coming in the workplace right now, you know, you might have heard some things like, well, that's not the way we do it, or it's only done this way. Well, this is the policy. And in sharing meetings, if you're in those younger generations, you may not feel at all like you're being heard, because generations like myself aren't willing to listen because we've always done things a certain way and we know what works, if that makes sense. Oh, and Katie, I'm going to let you watch the chat because I don't have Tara on here to watch it for me. So you can interrupt me if there's major questions in there. I'm just going to keep going if that's okay.
Yep,
Should have covered that. Okay. This is one of the most important statements that Dr. Elmore wants to make sure that any of us that teach his material or are certified by his material, we make sure we help you understand. This is not stereotyping at all. In fact, my kids are now, my son just turned 34, my daughter's 32, soon to be 33. They're both married. We have kids. They have kids, not we. Well, we all do have kids. And they all live close. And when I was going over this material about 7 years ago, 5 years ago, they were looking at me like, I don't act like that. I'm not like that. I'm like, well, some of it you are, yet they were raised by a parent that probably raised them maybe a little different than their friends. I don't know, but there is no stereotyping. It's just understanding, so that honestly, the goal is to communicate, be open, and work better together, because every generation has their strengths. You know, you guys have probably heard, and I think this is important background, we developed like wet cement. We are actually molded in our first 7 years of our life. Our brain actually has learned all of the things it needs to know to keep you safe in the first 7 years. Up to the age of 26, your brain is still developing up to that point. But the formality years are in the first 7 years of our life. So we're very moldable then, but then as we learn more, as we get older, and because we're exposed to things that have happened in our life, like terrorism, shooting, attacks. You know, today's the anniversary of the bombing in Oklahoma of the Murrah building. By the way, I'm in Oklahoma, like she said. And it's funny, I've not heard a word about that except for on the news last night. But we're celebrating what happened here in Oklahoma City and the big bomb that honestly was one of the first terrorist attacks that my mind could actually remember, right? Every generation is formed and their thinking and their context around certain things in the world is created based on what's going on in the world around them. The generation that we don't talk about, which are my grandkids, the alphas that are coming up. There's a slight chapter in the back of the book that addresses that, but we're learning more about them and what they're going to be exposed. Think about they're exposed to, like the alphas. They all grew up, most of them, their first memory for people wearing masks, right? So that was no big deal to them. What was a big deal to me is way not a big deal to them. I mean, technology is definitely not a big deal to them, and it's a big deal to me, right? They're just growing up with it. So we have to look at, especially if you have children, if you have nieces and nephews or special little ones in your life, they are in that formative year and they're calling them the alpha generation. And I can't wait to keep hearing more about them. What I just said basically is on this slide. Every generation has its own paradigm. You've got people in your life of different generations, supervisors, family members, significant others, colleagues at work, your customers, your clients. They all represent a different paradigm shift, meaning they grew up with a context about the world, about politics, about real estate, honestly. And we can talk a little bit more about that if we have time. So 5 generations coming of age. This is one of the most important slides I can pop up here. Actually, it is one of the more fun slides. This tells us who we are. So what I want you to do with this, I want you to look at this slide. I'm going to be watching my time. I want you to look at this slide and I want you to figure out which of those sections you fall into. Are you Generation Z, Generation Y, which are millennials? We're not going to break them up into groups. Generation X, or are you boomers? Okay, I'm a boomer. I fall in that boomer count area just barely. So does everybody have the generation you fall into? I'm going to stop share and I'll bring it back up. See if I can see you all. How many physically raise your hand, not on the screen. How many of you guys are, Katie, help me watch this. How many of you guys are Gen Z? Those would be just barely's, right? They're just barely in the workforce.
We've got one hand raised.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see this. Okay. Then how many fall in that millennial category? The biggest workforce in the workforce right now, the biggest. Okay. All right. Look at that. I'm going to be the oldest person on this Zoom again, I bet. I taught 2 weeks ago in Nashville. I was the oldest person in the room. Okay. How many are boomers? Are like me? Okay. Katie, what's the read of the room?
Well, there's a lot of people.
You skipped a generation.
Oh, I did.
Gen X.
That's mine.
X. Okay. There's Leslie raising her hand. Okay. Was millennial the top number that came up, Katie? Sorry, I threw that on you, Katie. I didn't ask you.
No, I mean, I think it's kind of a fair tie between millennial and boomer. There are a lot of boomers that raise their physical hand, not their digital hand.
Yeah.
The millennials raised their digital hand.
Do you see why I did that? Right? That's why I smiled so big when I saw the little hand raises pop up. Okay. I'll be honest. I have to teach myself every Zoom I'm on, and that's quite a few a week. I have to teach myself every group Zoom I'm on how to remember to raise my hand on Zoom, not like this. I'm this person that does this, so I'll laugh at myself. So we've got boomers, we've got busters, which is Gen X, we've got millennials, generation, we call that IY, like Leslie said. and then Generation Z. And I don't want this to be confusing at all. I just want you to soak this in a little bit. Hopefully you'll get the book. And on page, I think it's 38. I have the paperback version, but I also have a box of hardcovers in my closet. I like to listen to things more than I like to physically read, but this book I use like the MREA book. It's like an encyclopedia. And Tim actually teaches it this way. This small chart that just talks about the era that you're born in, your life paradigm or your narrative, and your attitude towards authority. This is just a tiny piece of that whole chart. It's a 2-page chart, and you can add, and I can't hold it up where you can see it, but it literally goes into ethics. It goes into your role of work, your relationships. It goes into your sense of identity, depending upon which age you are. And it is so fun. Like, this is why you could spend 3 hours on this, because it's like the DISC assessment. How many of y'all have taken a DISC, DISC, personality analysis? Once we take something like that, we go around and we start pinpointing who we think everyone is. Oh, well, there's a high I right there, right? That's stereotyping in a way. Yet it gives us awareness to know who we might be working with and how they might be making decisions. And in the real estate industry, the best thing that I can tell any generation is to remain open. Don't go in with your normal generational attitude where, it might be that, I'm right, everybody else is wrong, which my generation tends to kind of feel that it's our way or the highway, because we've been there, done that, we've worked hard, and we've proven it, dadgummit. And we think everybody should react and be like we are. And so the biggest challenges can be between the boomer generation and the millennials, because the millennials are going to go choose who they're going to be in business with. If you look at that last line about their attitude towards authority, the boomer, let's just start with the boomer generation. My generation says, I'm going to replace them someday. I wanted to be an operating partner. I was. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a regional director. I chose not to. I never thought I was going to be a MAPS coach, because I wanted to replace somebody and take over their empire, right? The busters, they tend to endure their authority. Okay, so if you're born in that era, they endure it. They can handle it, but they're going to keep things real and they're going to do work. Leslie, that was you, right? And then the millennial generation, which, like I said, is the largest generation in the workplace right now, they're choosing their leaders. So if you're a leader, if you're leading a team, if you're leading your market center, whatever it is you're leading, you're being chosen to work with more than likely. They're choosing you. So my whole class that I do on 8 areas of leadership, one of the first things we start with is you. You. Who do you have to be for people to choose you, no matter what generation that you're in? And then Generation Z, the ones that are coming up, they're seeing terrorism. They're seeing nothing but technology. This is what we see from Generation Z, right? If you can see my phone. In an interview, they're on their phone taking notes. People like me have to just talk through that and over that and allow that to happen, because that's their connection. Generation Z, even in politics, they're not sure they need authority. A lot of their authority is coming from Google. It's coming from social media. Whatever is being said on social media, whatever they can Google is truly their answer. So they're not sure they need authority. And it's up to all of us together to work together to make all of these generations come together. Okay. Katie, is there anything in the chat that I need to address about this chart? Or does anybody have any questions? Feel free to just take yourself off mute and ask.
There's no questions in the chat. If anybody has questions, now's a good time to ask.
Do what?
I said there's nothing in the chat. So if anybody has questions, unmute themselves.
Terrie, I have a question. Is you made a comment that the younger generation is going to be on their phone and we have to endure that. Will you go into that a little bit more? Because somebody referenced this, the audacity of this young person to show up at the interview and they're making notes on their phone, and what the difference of the mindset there.
But, you know, there you said, just like everything else, that is such a great question, because this room that I was in a few weeks ago in Nashville, when I said I was the oldest person in the room was made up of mainly the younger millennial group, couple of Gen Zs in there, actually. And then there were quite a few people your age. And interesting enough, it's when I'm on stage, I'm panning the room, right? I'm looking for the tables that we can connect with that are engaged. And we went from a very hyped up room to very serious, talking about self-leadership. And I have to, when I say endure, that might be a harsh word. I should probably put accept. Tim Elmore might get on to me for not using the word endure, because I have to accept that their life is on that device. And they are probably taking notes where I might rather write notes or put them in my iPad or type them while someone's talking. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to, whether it's one-on-one or in a classroom, set standards and expectations about our devices, and then accept that people are going to use their device. In fact, last week when I was training live, this was part of my train the trainer that I do. And I said, so let's just start here. How many of you are in the room are in which category? And I said, how many of y'all will be using your phone today for notes? How many of you all will be using your iPad? Blah, blah, blah. We got a read of the room. And I said, feel free to take notes on those devices. Right. I had to like get my head around that to say, feel free to take your notes. Can we agree that we're not going to be on social media returning email during this time? Would that be okay to agree to? And all the room said yes. So we were okay with that. So we create those standards and expectations in a room. And I think the same thing has to happen when you're one-on-one. And then we have to know we can't control it all, unfortunately, because I love to control things. Does that help?
That's great, Terrie. And I just put in the notes that we really need to accept that they are participating. They're just doing it a little differently.
They're doing it a little differently. That's right. That's right. Okay. Great question. We could spend hours on this, but we're not going to. We're going to keep going. How much more time do I have? Just help me know that.
20 minutes.
20? Okay. All right. So it's important to understand leadership principles behind this, because our context explains our conduct. And what that means is, like I said earlier, our context, our story, if you've all been in bowl, you know, point far, right? So our story that we have in our head is our context. Same word. It's why we believe what we believe, whether it's true or not. We all have a story. The story of your generation, no matter what generation you're in, is shaped by the world around you and what's going on around you. A lot of that you cannot control. It's just happening. So, for instance, the Gen Zs and Alphas that are coming up, the thought of guns and terrorism and horrible acts that we see on the news is never really going to go away. It's just going to be there. And that's a part of who they are. Just like I referenced the masks earlier. Those masks don't affect my grandkids at all. Never bothered them, because they grew up seeing that. Now they wonder why we don't all wear them, but they understand why some people do. Right. And they're too little to understand any kind of politicized view of that. They are where they are. I've actually heard my kids who are in the younger millennial generation talk to me about not trusting anybody in government. And that's a little hard for me to swallow, because one of my top values is respect, right? And I just have to talk through that with them and understand that. So give you some examples. So to connect with people today, we have to read people before we lead them. This is very similar to the DISC, right? We can't give everybody a DISC and understand, or a KPA, and understand their personality style and their behavioral style and how they're wired. We're just going to have to learn to be present and read them. So one of the ways I've read you all today was exactly what Katie mentioned earlier. How many people raised their hand on Zoom and how many physically raised their hand? That's an example of reading people. No judgment, no right or wrong. Just be so observant about behavior, because most of the time we're not going to be able to go, now, how old are you? When were you born? Right? We're just gonna have to learn to read people and look for their cues. There's another really good book. I'm not one to mention a lot of books. However, because I said the word cues, I'm going to mention it, and I don't have a picture of it, but it's actually by Vanessa Van Edwards. You can't see it behind me. That's what I was turning around to look. And it's a book called Cues, C-U-E-S. It's a great book for coaching. It's a great book for leaders because it talks about what I just said, reading people before you lead them. And it's kind of like an encyclopedia too. So if y'all love to read and you want to enhance your growth, you could even follow her. She's a blast. She's a psychologist and she's so much fun. So having these insights, how do we communicate? Number one, we've got to always lead with humility. All our communication has to come from being humble first. Today, my goal is for you to be aware of this generational complexity that we might have, and just get humble and read about yourself and read about your generation without judgment. And some of it you're going to agree with it, and some of it you're not, just like a DISC assessment or any other personality assessment. Number two is huge. In fact, it's one of my top 3 value words is respect. Respect not only who you are and what you bring, respect what others bring. And I don't have the bandwidth today to show you, but there's actually a story in a video that Tim always uses in his longer classes. And it talks about the Sherwin-Williams, we call it the Sherwin-Williams paint story. And a manager at Sherwin-Williams in Florida hired a young millennial to work in the paint store, a Sherwin-Williams paint store. And the leader was my age. They were boomers, a little older than me, and hired this young millennial to work. Well, they got so excited about paint, they started developing different color palettes, mixing paint and developing paint, which was not wrong, which was not bad. And then they started putting it on TikTok, right? They're creating reels, they're going to social media. Some of his videos went viral years ago on Instagram because he was mixing paint and bringing out different colors. And he was actually brought in, told to bring that all down and to stop doing it because that isn't what was going to sell paint. Now I'm just going to stop the story there, because what happened is that young man went viral with his videos and eventually owned his own paint store. And now he's doing something in corporate design and consulting based on what he did with his paints. He didn't need that guy anymore. He didn't need that leader telling him that's not the way we do things anymore. That leader would have changed that whole scenario for that Sherwin-Williams franchise, possibly with Sherwin-Williams, if he would have been more open and respectful of that young man's talents and where he was actually advertising it, right? Like I wish I had a whole bunch of those kind of people in my life. And then the other way is curiosity. I believe that's part of our Y4C2TESs, right? Stay curious. Stay curious about the other people, not just based on a chart or a book or what you're hearing me say. Stay curious about how they make decisions, how they're communicating, and how you will learn to communicate with other generations. Okay, so instead of stereotyping, we've got to leverage the strength of each generation. So here's some just action step. Builders who are barely in the workplace, just to give you an example, they bring wisdom and loyalty. A lot of you may have great grandparents that are builders. My dad was a builder, and of course he's passed away 14 years ago, but he was a builder generation. He was in World War II. He was in that generation where, the Depression, he grew up in the Depression era, and they saved everything. So dad would have folded napkins. We didn't get rid of anything until it was worn out and had holes in it. You all may have people in your life and you may be smiling right now. And a lot of those traits that I grew up with, my dad was 45 when I was born. Just like I said, I was a baby. I grew up in that era in my household. And so I brought a lot of those very conservative traits with me into my adult life that were amazing for me, yet they hindered me till about the age of 46. When I decided, man, that money can't just sit in savings anymore. I really need to do something with that. Boomers, they bring stories, experience, and coaching. Well, you're looking at one. So I just gave you a story, right? I bring you 40 years of real estate experience. I've been through 4 shifts. That's not bragging on me. That's just saying that's the experience I bring. But the way I'm going to learn and the way I need to learn to lead and coach is through the younger generations. If I don't understand people that are on this Zoom, for instance, and where you are and where you live, I'm not going to be a successful boomer. I'll just be a boomer. And then Gen X brings pragmatic ideas, contrarian insight. Isn't that interesting? They really believe that their ideas are what's going to change the world. So they bring this enlightenment of, hey, let's do it this way, but they're still very level-headed, right? This is also called busters, by the way. So they are still very level-headed in their thinking. They can actually be very conservative in their approach. And I want you to hear that this generation is actually a pretty good mix of the boomer generation and the millennial generation. And millennials bring confidence. We can see in this company, like we've got huge opportunity in this company to be a team leader, to be a coach, to be an MCA, to lead a division, to lead a community. Like we've got so many opportunities in this company that it's almost overwhelming. And what we know about millennials is they want to get there and they want to get there fast. And if we say, man, you need to be a team leader for about 5 years and prove yourself before you get X, that's possibly too long for them. And they'll go out and they'll be entrepreneurial and they'll go create their own big teams. If you look at Keller Williams as a whole, many of our large expansion teams are run by millennials. And they didn't go through the ranks. They decided they were going to get there, be entrepreneurial, probably fail a little harder than everybody else, pick themselves up and get there faster. They bring hope. They bring energy. In fact, there are some millennials that I look at and I'm like, I just want to be like you when I grow up. I mean, seriously, I coach a lot of them and I'm like, I just want to be like you. Like, where did I miss that? That's how the millennials make us feel. But they also have a very cafeteria style attitude. If it's not out there and their leader isn't giving it to them, then they're going to go pull from here and here and here, and they're going to choose it. They're going to get real creative instead of staying in a lane that somebody might put them in. And remember, these are all good things. But we just all have to work together. And then Generation Z, they're a hacker mindset, which is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. They want to hack their way into roles. They want to hack their way into learning. Generation Z and the Alpha generation are pegged to be some of the highest IQs that we've ever seen. Not EQ, IQ. Where these generations might be challenged is in the emotional intelligence arena, because this is the generation that tends to say, Google it. And I'm not gonna lie, my kids tell me that a lot. I'll ask a question. My son's a firefighter and I'll say, well, what about, and he'll go, did you Google that yet? Like, he's serious. He's telling me to Google things. I'm like, I'm asking you. That should make you feel good, right? They don't believe that way. But the Gen Zs are hackers. They're going to find their way into a job. I've got examples of that. We don't have time to share. They will find their way into the job. They don't need us for answers. They can look on the internet, and whether the internet's true or not, they're going to figure it out. My daughter called me last night as an example, and my grandson has a little knot on his neck. She started asking me about the question. She said, I'm just calling you because I just want to make sure. I go, well, thank you. She said, well, I've already Googled it. And I'm like, then why are you calling me? Right? You just want your mama's experience on this. She just needed to confirm what she read on internet when she Googled it, that Gen Zs may not even come to me and ask, if that makes sense. They're going to go deeper into finding their solutions, and they have a huge entrepreneurial spirit. So we'll probably close here because this is a good place to close. The key to leading people today with 5 generations in the workforce is that we just have to begin with belief. And what do I mean by beginning with belief? We've got to believe that our way is not the only way. We've got to believe that there are solutions for all of us. And my suggestion to you, and I'll close with this, is that you understand it a little bit more by just reading it. And you don't necessarily have to get the book. Like you can Google generational diversity. You can Google Tim Elmore and look it up. He's just one of the more renowned students of generational diversity. And we're going to keep developing these outlines together, like developing it for real estate agents and developing it for different businesses so that they understand it. This has been the most widely asked for topic that I've been asked to bring, teach on Zoom, or incorporate into other trainings that we always had. Like I suggested earlier, train the trainer, that KWU has got certified. When I taught it last week in my Iowa Market Center for our trainers that have to be certified to give continuing education, I incorporated some of these slides in it, along with some psychological safety material, because I believe when you're leading a room, when you're teaching, when you're leading a family, when you're leading a community group or a church group, those are two critical areas you need to understand in our time right now. What are the different generations feeling and believing? And then how do I, knowing who I am, how do I create psychological safety so that people will feel safe to communicate with me? So I'm going to close it right there because like I said, I can turn this into a 3-hour course and we're not going to, but I would love to hear any questions that you have. And I feel like I breezed through that like really fast. So I apologize.
I love it. Katie, did you see any questions in the chat, or if anybody has any questions, like drop it in there?
Yeah, drop it or take yourself off mute and ask.
Terrie, and I'm gonna mimic that, right? Like in all the coachings with like, especially with our team leads and our rainmakers, or even agents navigating different clients, I can't tell you how often they just say, I just don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. Or why don't they get it? So I just love how this conversation really relates to how we handle things in our own family and our friend groups and in our clients, and especially in business if we're running teams or leading others. So
I do want to say, I want to thank Eric for putting in the chat what he put in there. He said, respect doesn't mean you have to totally agree. No, you don't, you won't. I mean, you won't. Think about, like, I didn't agree with stuff my parents said. I don't agree with some of the things my kids say, or even people that I work with in my market centers that are younger than me. I don't have to agree with it, but I'm sure going to respect it, because now more than ever, I mean, I have to. Like, I can tell you stories about things that I don't get as a human that my kids will go, don't say that again. Like, I mean, it's funny. Like, it's really funny. They'll go, don't use that word. Don't use that. And I've even got in this presentation, I even have slides that are words and phrases from the different generations. And it's funny to throw them up on the screen and see how many people even know what they mean. I mean, it cracks me up. I hear something new every day. I learned one 2 weeks ago that I'm like, what? And they go, don't say that out loud, but this is what it means. I'm like, oh, okay. Anyway,
it's important to know the word and know when not to use it.
When not to use it. I just don't use it until I ask my kids. Honestly, I'll say, or I'll ask Leslie, what does that mean anyway? Like, I'm not afraid to ask people that I trust. What does that mean? Like, what did they just say to me when they said that? I'm okay to be that way.
Well, you guys, remember that if you were on the call, you have been entered to win the raffle for the book. So we will be selecting one of you that are on our live call today to receive that. We also went over a ton of links and resources today. All of those are not only in the chat, but Katie, we will put those into our wrap-up email as well as a recording of this. So you can go back and take those generations and values again. So that's good. Katie, anything else that we missed?
No, happy not sunny April in Oregon. We're still waiting for that sun to come out. Thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, Terrie, for putting your email in the chat. And we hope everyone has a fabulous day.
Yep. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, or if you need any resources. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Terrie.
Thanks, Terrie.
Do I get a recording?
Of course.
Okay. All right.
Okay.